First order of business is Johnson County Fiber Connection to Public Works. Laura Smith.
Thank you. Last month we talked about a proposal from Johnson County Fiber to connect, they're running up to the Nelson treatment plant to connect our public works building to that fiber network for a total cost not to exceed $20,000. There were several questions last time, kind of trying to look at advantages and disadvantages to doing that. We currently pay about $1,200 a month for our connection to Time Warner. This would eliminate that cost going forward, and so we would hit a break-even point in about 17 months with that. This would give us, there's some advantages. I think one of the questions last time was whether or not we should just wait for Google Fiber. That really gives us a connection to the internet, not so much to the network, because we are connected in through this building and the community center and the police department through the county's network. So we have some better IT capabilities by hooking to that fiber network that we would not be able to access. So if we were to wait and connect with Google Fiber, for example, then we would go out. If at Public Works they wanted to connect into our network, they would go out, hit a server, come back in, as opposed to coming directly into the city's network. So I think there's some advantages with some of the mapping and things that we do. It also gives us the potential, and I don't know that we would ever use it, but as we talk more with the county, some of the other cities who have fiber use agreements with them are also sort of planning for or thinking about if they ever wanted to use cameras and collect traffic data. This fiber system would support that at no additional cost. So I think staff would still recommend that we look at making that connection. Again, with the savings that we would have in our existing internet service bill and the kind of traditional savings that we have in the budget, we could absorb that in the public works budget for 2000.
Did you try to talk them down?
I did. I'll keep working, which is why I think the recommendation says not to exceed. If I can do better than that in the next couple of weeks, I'm still working on it.
Were all your questions, Amy, answered from last time we got her stuff?
I say take it to council.
Consent, or you want to?
I think consent's fine.
Consent's good.
Great. Next thing would be KDOT funding commitment for Turkey Creek Trail initial design grant.
Yep, and I will go ahead and take this one. So back in 2014, council authorized us to submit an application for preliminary engineering and design grant through MARC for the Turkey Creek Trail. We've had lots of debate and discussion over this trail over the last several years. And it seems like one of the fundamental questions that we come back to is what is the true cost to construct it? You may recall we had a grant previously for construction that we turned back because we weren't ready to make the match for that and get that project designed. So typically, cities are responsible for 100% of preliminary engineering and design. This was an opportunity that had not been available before for us to take advantage and use other people's dollars to design the project, which is why we thought it would be a good way to get that, get some of those questions answered and really come up with an accurate cost for construction. So we submitted the grant application. MARC selected 13 recipients, including the City of Mission, for 27 applications. I think we had a conversation back in December. All of the project applicants were asked to look at either increasing their local match or taking a reduction in scope because they were kind of, everything was taking a little bit of a haircut. And we said, no, we aren't willing to increase our contribution to that, so we did take a reduction and looked at, we felt we could do that in reducing the scope of the project and still get what we needed out of that. What I learned as we were putting this agenda packet together was that after the grant submission deadline, we were told that the federal funding requirements that came with this grant would require that if we did not move forward with construction, and I've since learned with some additional research, that would either be right-of-way acquisition or the start of construction. Within 10 years, there's the potential that we would have to repay that grant. There's language in the federal documents that allow us some room to negotiate, so they look at everything on a case-by-case basis.
What is the language that allows the negotiation?
It just says that they'll consider the reasonable circumstances, and so that deadline could be extended.
So is it, I'm sorry, what do you think?
So the question would, so then if we weren't at a point to be ready to move forward with right-of-way acquisition or construction within 10 years, we could be potentially facing a requirement to repay the grant portion, which is $69,570. That would, we would still own the design. And so we still, I think staff is still recommending that we would proceed with this process because again, I think it answers the critical question that really allows us to prioritize this project with the other things and through our CIP and the discussions that we've had. What we included in the packet was what you've seen before in the CIP program where we try to plug in and say, you know what we wouldn't recommend is waiting till year 10 and then potentially look at a $70,000 repayment hit. We would suggest that if we move forward with this process, we would kind of reserve or restrict about $8,700 of that annually so that those funds would be available in the event that we were asked to repay that or we weren't ready to proceed with construction. $8,700, you say, well, that's shorter than 10 years, yes, because I tried to match it up to the life of the Parks and Recreation sales tax. So trying to match up with the revenue stream that we have right now so it gets inflated just a little bit. I wish that I had known about this repayment requirement sooner in the process. But I think if you look at this sheet, and I want to just touch on a couple of things that I think are still conservative when you look at the Parks and Recreation program. I think it is worth, as I said, I think staff is still recommending that we go ahead and proceed with the grant. So if you look at that, if you look at 14, and I just want to point out kind of what our plan and approach is. If you go to the bottom at the end of 2014 and you look at an ending fund balance of about $727,000. Now remember, this is sales tax plus alcohol funds that go in here, so it's a little bit of a blended match. But if you see the items that are dropped down there below, roof repairs, cooling tower, conference center video, those were projects that we thought were going to be accomplished in 14, and either because there wasn't a need as we got into it with the cooling tower and the chiller, or we just didn't get those done. There still are identified needs. We didn't dump all of those funds back into the fund balance. We're restricting those so that it doesn't overinflate the balance that's available. So that's why you see a reserved fund balance and an unreserved fund balance that then carries over. That would be our intention going forward with this so that we continue to build those building reserve funds, those outdoor park improvement funds over time. I think the other thing that you'll see, so you can see I built in our contribution in 2015 of 39, well I built in the full 108, 570, excuse me, on the expense side for the grant and showed the 69,570 in grant funds expenses above the line. So those project costs are accounted for in 2015. And then a reserve of the $8,700. And this plan does only go out 5 years, but we would continue that. I think one thing to look at, this is still, I think, conservative. If you look at our actual sales tax collections, in 2014 we were at $846,000. We have budgeted between $775,000 and $750,000, which is a conservative estimate. So there's still the potential to add another $100,000 to the bottom line. In this plan. The other thing that we did is we took out the Parks and Recreation sales tax revenues for the gateway. So you'll see that line has been zeroed out all the way across. So this makes no assumptions and is still a conservative approach to kind of where we ended 2014.
Well, no doubt it's a surprise, but I still think it's more than a calculated, reasonable risk to take. I'm still in favor.
So when you say right-of-way acquisition or start construction, is there a percentage, like a significant percent? Like could we spend $1 on right-of-way acquisition and meet the requirements of having started?
I don't know. I think they would have, I would suspect no. But for example, if we were involved in seeking appraisals, because we would go through, with the federal funds involved, there would be similar requirements as over on Johnson Drive. So we'd be hiring an appraiser, we'd be looking at that process. So if we were engaged in that process, and or looking, the other thing we've talked about is this really then allows us to get back into the construction grant funding cycle through March. And we think we would still be very competitive through that process. So if you recall, I think our grant was slightly over $1 million, which left our matching portion at I think between $800,000 and $900,000. And spreading, so there would be some opportunity to spread that out over time or look to see how that might match up with our grant funds.
So, when we start that right-of-way acquisition, we're locked in because of the federal funds. When we start that, we can't start it, get appraisals, and then say, we're not ready for right-of-way acquisition? Or can we?
No, the federal funding requirements are just going to dictate the process that we use. So for example, on Johnson Drive, we didn't use any federal dollars to actually acquire the right-of-way. So as long as we had acquired that right-of-way, and I think we would want to do that, knowing that we would be applying for grant funds in the future, that would likely have those similar
Alright,
requirements.
so I'm gonna ask you that offline about that, because I thought we did get federal funds, that's why we had to get 2 appraisals and all that, so I don't wanna, it's already gonna be a long enough night without getting into that, but I definitely wanna talk to you about that. So the process doesn't include starting and then turning around and saying, so I get that you have to follow a certain process with federal funds. My question is a part of that process starting, and then once you've started, you can't stop, or? Which I think
No.
you said no.
No.
So in other words, construction doesn't have to be completed by the end of this thing. But.
Is
yeah,
there,
we do.
yeah.
I don't have a problem with it either. You know, like Dave said, I think that, if we were gonna look at seriously doing a job, we don't know where the trail is exactly gonna be, what it's gonna cost. So we'd have to pay for these engineering expenses anyway to get it done. Here's an opportunity to get a large percentage of them paid by somebody else. Is there a little risk there? Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that we're gonna be looking at some kind of a trail one way or the other in the future. And I've said before, I support the trail. I wouldn't want to do it this year or next year because I want to see the city paying down some debt. I talked to Laura about that actually. We paid down a good chunk of the debt that we had this year, $5 million, she said. I think we're going to be paying off another over $3 million next year. That's moving the right way. I like that. I'd probably have a little better appetite for going into a project like this. And that's only a couple years away. So we've got 10 years to work with this. I think it's a project that is going to happen. We've got pressure already to get this tied in from the county and Mark and whoever else. But they want us tied in with the inner cities trails that they've got going on. So I think we're going to be doing the project anyway. I think it's a great opportunity to take advantage of somebody else's money. So I would support it.
I think if it's such a great idea and there's so much support on this council for it, instead of maybe paying down debt, then we ought to put money aside.
Yeah.
We're not putting money aside to pay out $800,000, $900,000, and we're looking at probably no less than $500,000 to bring to the table to do this. So if we're all in on it, then we need to build it into the budget.
She's talking
We need to
about the
start-
return trip.
Yeah, if we're gonna
Well,
build
we don't even
this-
know.
We don't know, I mean, we're speculating.
Right, but the speculation right now is that it's gonna be over $2 million for the trail, so I think it's safe to start now, putting away some money to start paying for this, right? So,
Well, I'm fine with that. I don't know where the $2 million number came from. I mean, I thought we were.
well, Laura just said it.
Exorbitant at $1 million, and everybody had
Yeah.
sticker shock with respect to that, so.
It's $1 million for
Must be like
the grant, and then
About
$800,000 to
1.8.
$900,000 for us, so.
Well, that's what
$2 million.
that's what it was when we went around this last go around, right? Right?
And that
So-
included, that likely included the preliminary engineering and design costs that we talked about. as
So all I'm
well.
saying is that there's never been any preliminary engineering on this to determine if the price tag can come significantly down from $1.8 to $1.9 million. This gives us the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I absolutely don't agree. Okay, again, as I stated before, I think the city has a lot of other really important things like stormwater, secondary stormwater, streets. I mean, we're gonna have to raise fees and taxes on residents next year just to pay for stormwater. So I think we need to start thinking about how we spend the people's money. And for me, I just don't know that we are 100% for certain that spending almost over $1 million or around $1 million.
First, the implication that no one else around this table thinks about how we spend the people's money is offensive. I
I'm not
think-
implying that, I'm
No,
making
that's
a
what you
comment.
said, and all I'm telling you is this. This is a project that has unbelievable support in this community. Just like Johnson Drive, if you make the investment will come to this community. All we're talking about right now is potentially being on the hook for $70,000
Right.
after a 10-year horizon. And that's if we don't do any land acquisitions. And I am certain with the way the federal process works, 10 years could easily stretch into 12 or 14 if you're showing good faith effort towards trying to build this. And I also tell you this, that there is, Pat's right, unbelievable pressure to connect this portion of the trail. And I think when we do have engineered plans, and when we do have a final number, the amount of money that may become available to us, we may be surprised that pool continues to increase. So I think our risks are fairly mitigated at this stage of the game until we look, because we don't know what we don't know.
And
I'm
the
just
other
asking
thing-
you guys to start making a line item in the budget, start putting money aside for it.
And the other thing I'm saying is we already have money coming in that's earmarked for Parks and Recreation, which I'm assuming this trail would fall under. And that's what it's got to be used for. It can't be used for paying down your stormwater debt.
Right, but I'm sorry, I thought we had a shortfall in what, I thought one of the whole reasons we increased the Parks and Rec sales tax was to help make up the difference in the cost what it cost the city to fund the community center. We
That's
are
not what I
already,
was-
well, we're already behind the game in overall funding. We've had to year over year pull money out of the general fund to help meet that shortfall. So I am fully
Right.
on board with increasing the sales tax for Parks and Rec. But what we need to realize is that we have things that we need to spend the money on now without already being like, hey, we got a sales tax, let's figure out where we can spend it 10 years from now. We have things to take care of now. If you look at this, in 5 years, we have $7,000 left in this fund. Or whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. There's $7,000 left in this fund without doing anything else to put any money aside for this trail except for this $8,700.
Well, and that's one of the things that that we need to look at is the monies. Everybody would like the trail if we could afford the trail.
Right, I
think
would
it's a
love the
no-brainer.
trail.
And I know that there's a lot of pressure, regional and federal pressures for the health. Another thing that we need to look at is it in the best interest of Mission to put a trail along the outskirts? Versus, one thing Amy brought up last time when we were in council is, can we look at other areas for this trail that might be less money? That I would like to see it through the middle of Mission instead of on the outskirts of Mission.
Isn't that what they would be looking at?
Well, I'm not sure, Pat. Mark wants to, they had already delineated where they wanted it. They wanted it along the stream bed. They made up where they wanted our trail. And they also, Mark, we're going to be signing an agreement with the regional council for project management. Now, that's our next discussion. So it's something to think about. What's in the best interest of Mission, I think, is all what we're here for. And where the trail is located, what would be in the best interest of Mission, the outskirts? Or can we do it as something feasible that would still connect and bring bikes through? I don't know.
And to be honest, every other city hasn't had, it's not as expensive as it is for our city because of the location and where the stream bed comes through. It's just an extremely difficult and challenging topography and landscape. So it's different for everybody else to do what they're doing. It's probably not as big of an expense to them. Maybe granted, other areas might have a wider expanse of the trail, but they probably generally have a larger community in general, so bigger tax base.
The mayor drove it today.
I drove it and walked it.
And what do you think?
Surprised the
Just for
coyotes and
information?
everything. It was, well, like I said, is everybody finished? I don't like to butt into you. I know that it's
I don't know if
your.
we're finished, but go ahead.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I walked it about 3 or 4 months ago for a couple of hours, you know, where we were gonna have ours. And now today, I did about 2.5 to 3 hours, drove and walked. If you don't mind, I wrote some stuff down after I got home, and I'll just read it, and then you can discuss what you want and don't.
We've been honest, man.
Okay, first one was, who picks the consultant? I don't like being at the mercy of KDOT or Mark. because we're not in control. That's just a couple questions. For Mission, the trail would be very hard to access because we gotta, you gotta go down Lamar to get on it. And I mean, the apartments will have a great time there. But when I was in Merriam, that looks great too, Merriam. But it goes right to the middle of that. They've got restaurants, they've got residential, they've got commercial, it's going right through the middle.
So just on that, no, I agree with you 100%. It would be interesting to talk to them to see what kind of repair and upkeep they already have to make, because there's significant cracks in like the creek bed, so it's probably not necessarily trail, but their creek bed and everything, there's significant,
I don't know, I didn't see that. I mean, I was
Yeah.
moving, but, and it goes for a long ways. And
Yeah,
it
I've walked
definitely
it.
looks very good.
It's very
I mean, a
nice.
trail along creek would be, I mean, it's not.
Right.
So then I'm at Antioch and the south side of I-35, and that's where Overland Park starts there.
Like in 67th Street-ish.
No, right at I-35 in Antioch. And that's where it goes around on the south side of Antioch. And up to that point, there's a 3-foot sidewalk. So you're going down 3-foot sidewalk, and then you turn and go towards us, Not very good. I mean, I think what they maybe are going to do in the future, but it would be very costly, is they need to take a bridge from that part over to Merriam, because Merriam's goes in and out of the creek, and then he'll hit Merriam Lane, and then it'll, and I didn't see the end. I mean, you could go, I guess, down Merriam Lane and hit Antioch and go over.
I think it
For
comes
that
down
matter,
by the
that'd be a
city,
good place
the
for
city
them to
market.
continue the trail, just go down Merriam Lane and forget us, but, okay. And I, you can't do everything, you gotta pick and choose what we invest in. I'm using that investment, I've learned. We need farmers market, we can update our parks, take care of what we have and then expand, it's kind of what you guys are talking about. And I guess that trail, people are expecting us to do it, but man, we got dealt a bad hand. We got dealt a real bad hand where that trail's gonna go.
It's very, very tough.
I don't like it, and I don't like finding out,
Right.
almost time to sign is that we have to pay the money back. Nobody's fault at this table or in this room, I'm not saying that. I don't like finding out that late, that you vote on something, and then you find out, oh, that's not a grant, that's a loan.
Right.
Zero.
So
it's not a good place, and it can't change. I mean, if this is called, let's see, Turkey Creek Trail, it's gonna go. If we get the money, it's to go to
It has
Turkey
to be,
Creek.
yeah.
It has to
It
go
will
to
have
Turkey
to
Creek.
go
We
to Turkey
can't,
Creek.
we
You
can't
can-
say, well, it'd be better suited if it would go up this way and this way. It's got to go to Turkey
You
Creek.
could-
so this
potentially-
wasn't originally called, this is
It's
not
a bad
called the
place.
Turkey Creek Trail, this is a streamway.
Greenway Park, Trail.
It's like
The Turkey
streamway.
Creek Trail, which is a part of the Streamway Park system.
Okay.
And if we
Two
have
separate
it like
things.
Merriam, I mean, it really looks good. Ours ain't gonna be that way. It's gonna be at the very edge of our city, and it's to access it, we're gonna have to go down Lamar and get on it, and then
Right.
when we get off it, we're gonna have to go up Lamar and ride our bikes wherever we're gonna go.
People will probably go into Merriam to get on it, to walk on it
Right,
and go back.
it'd be cheaper for us, I just wrote it as a joke, but it would be cheaper for us to buy everybody a car carrier for the bicycle and go over the mountain. Or a park that you can get onto. It's just not a good place. I was all for the 40,000, which is, I thought, at my limit, but, if we could find out
Reasonable
now
for
a
a fact
potential
finding.
110,000, and like I said, I know this is your guys' committee, I don't like to interrupt, but I felt like I had to say my opinion, and, it doesn't make me an expert because I spent, 2 hours looking at the trail, but it doesn't look like a good setup. I don't know who thought of it.
Well,
Maybe they
and
just thought,
they
we'll
just
get
wanted
through
the
those things
streamway.
as we
They
go.
So
just-
you
Really
and
like this
Amy would prefer to never have a trail go through there.
It's a bad
not
place. I
not
don't
through
know
that
how we're
space.
gonna-
And what concerns me is that over there by like that park that's over there by the apartments, right? So this is kind of stream. Is it Streamway Park?
It's a very out of the way park,
Right. How many people use that park?
very out of the way.
What's
park.
the crime in that? Is that park? Is that a high crime area? Is it not? Is it just?
I don't even think the
non-crime?
criminals could much find it. It's a cool place, it's a cool little
Well, you would think the
secluded
apartment
place.
complexes would
But
be
it's,
all
it's
over
behind an
using it.
apartment complex.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to
You
connect,
go park in an
they
apartment,
could go
yeah.
down Marion Lane. Or, you know, they have an alternative one, Overland Park is coming down, I think Metcalf. Is Glen in there?
Right here.
Yes, sir.
Oh, do you remember that? Are they coming down with a, maybe, it's not there yet, but maybe down Metcalf. I don't know if sometime then we could hit, but I think it was on the west, as I remember, on the west side of 69 or Metcalf. If we could hit Fox Ridge and then go down. I don't know, but it's
Well,
just a bad place.
I thought
It's a
that
bad place.
part of the
Everybody's
reason-
walking.
Right, I thought part of the reason why we were doing this, when we talked about it in council, maybe I'm wrong, I did not think it was set in stone where it had to go, and I thought that part of this money was going to be spent investigating.
The alignment along Turkey Creek Trail, but we can't use, so the grant funds are tied to the connection of Turkey Creek Trail. So if we're going to, so yes, I mean, part of the concern was the topography, and so was there a better alignment through there to make that connection? And that's exactly what part of this scope was. But we can't get out of the Turkey Creek bed and still access funds that are available for the Turkey
No
Creek
one ever
project.
said that. I mean, I have brought up
Right.
moving it through the city. I have brought that up at least three separate times in
And
this
never.
discussion, and nobody has ever said, Amy, that is not on the table. We absolutely cannot do that. This $40,000 cannot go towards exploring taking it out of the Turkey Creek Trail bed. Bad on me that I didn't read this Turkey Creek Trail and see that it absolutely positively has to stay
No,
along
I'm
that.
kind of getting,
You know what I mean? But nobody ever said that.
I was kind of
Ever.
thinking too, we had more options or leeway that maybe, I guess we don't have. And be in good form mission, because that was one of the things that they brought up, especially on the website for this trail, was how good it was for their communities, because it went through the communities and businesses bikers would stop off and shop in the communities, and it was going to be good for the communities. I'm not so sure in Mission's best interest that it skirts so much, it doesn't touch the
Besides
community.
Merriam, where else does it go right through the community, right through their downtown?
They show it on the website as far as when Martin sent that information.
I
Kansas
looked
City,
it up, can you tell me what other communities that go through
Kansas
their
City,
downtown area?
not downtown necessarily, but businesses that they could stop off and have lunch. And that was part of the PR. I'd have to look back at mine.
I mean, I'd have to look at this, I mean, you'd have to look at this,
But
right
it-
there where I
but-
have circled. I don't know how they're gonna get across there.
All I'm going to say is this, there are so many assumptions, so
Right.
much
There
speculation
is.
by this group that's talking the loudest right now. You guys were also the ones that railed against the loudest about doing anything out on Johnson Drive. We invested the money, and look at the people that are coming.
And
So
Dave,
you gotta have a vision if you wanna build a community, all right? And you gotta make an investment. And these are pennies that we're talking about, because all these questions that you're asking, all these assumptions, the bikers won't come up Lamar, it won't do a darn thing for our community, it won't bring bikers into Johnson Drive. You don't know any of that. You don't know where the trail is gonna go until we make this investment
Well,
and have a
it's all
number to
on
work
Turkey
with.
Creek.
And we have a number to work with, and then we can take it out to Mark. We can take it out to the rest of the community and say, you know what, this is unique. This is the most expensive per linear foot of this entire doggone thing, and we can't shoulder it alone. We need help. And you know what, if you have a number and you have a plan, you'll get it funded. You'll figure out how to find the money.
And then you know what? Johnson Drive is beautiful. And you know the biggest aspect and the most beautiful part that's bringing businesses and revenue into this city has nothing to do with the $10 million that was spent.
Could
You could have done
disagree.
every single thing
The
you
bar
did, spending
up
a
there said, "Why did
significantly
you come
less
into the-
amount of
You
money.
Why
guys,
did you
this
come
is
into
not
this
about
community?
Johnson Drive, this
That's
is not
all
about
point.
Johnson Drive.
You
This
guys,
is about.
you make speculations and you
Yeah,
say
but
things
you-
that they're fact and they're not true. That's
You're right,
absolutely
you're right,
not
Dave,
true.
about the
You are
bicycle.
out of your mind if you don't think the reason why the investment is happening on Johnson Drive right now is because of that $10 million.
Dave, this is
You are
not
out
about
of your
Johnson
mind.
Drive, we were talking about.
You're right, because it's about vision and it's about building a community. And if
and-
you want to build a vision and you want to build a
Right.
community, invest in Turkey Creek because it's good for this
I
community.
would like to just know if we do have any, that's all, I'd just like to know if we have any options that would bring it closer to businesses. I do want to have some local control over this project. We're the ones that are going to have to vote on it, we're the ones that are going to
Well,
have to spend the city's funds.
I
I
can
want to
tell
make
you
sure if we have
that
some
if the,
control.
if the trail was finished,
Mhm.
right, through Mission, that then Mission, we would have an option of putting in spur trails or whatever to take them wherever you want. And people could get to wherever they're going on their bike or walking or whatever they want to do.
You spend more money.
Yeah, it would. But I'm just saying that could be done, so, you know, if you want to look
So-
down the road even farther,
Okay.
there is a possibility of doing that.
Okay. Do we have any, will they come up with maybe some options, Laura, for the trail? It's not just set in stone where this goes necessarily.
The only options would probably be
Along
The
Turkey
grade.
Creek.
up, yeah, up, like on, what is that road that runs down to
Fox
the falls?
Drive.
Well, it's, I mean,
Fox
you have to
Foxwood
understand
Drive
that
or
there,
down along the creek.
our application was approved in part because we were, I mean, this Turkey Creek Trail plan existed long before us, kind of, if you will. And so, I mean, this grant application was based, I mean, we were a missing piece, right? A connecting piece. So looking at, is there a more affordable, more efficient way to connect that and connect it with the larger community? But, I mean, you won't have, I don't know, you would have to go back and say, you know, what are really all of our options?
Well, it's not in the plan.
That's it.
That's not in
Well,
this
I mean, I
plan.
think
to
we
watch.
can't-
I think we can't, what's not in the plan? Asking for options?
Right, other than along Turkey Creek Trail. So this $40,000, $39,000 that we're putting in and the additional $69,000 is what can happen along Turkey Creek, period. What can happen along this current plan? There is nothing in this request to ask, can we deviate from that plan at all? Can we bring it up a half a mile one way or a half a mile the other way? Can we bring it through the city of Mission? That's not a part of the scope of
Well,
the project.
I think there's a big difference between half mile up or down one way and through the city of Mission in terms of the scope, because you're not making that connection to the regional streamway corridor and that
connect.
trail system.
You can connect and go all the way through the city and come back down and connect again. There's nothing that stops you from starting down here, going all the way up and coming back down. I mean,
Putting some bike lanes in Johnson Drive and take it right down the street. No.
so it's not in the plan.
I guess I misunderstood that too. maybe.
I agree. I'm just very frustrated.
Yeah, I
So
knew
I'm
we
just
were
gonna
gonna
go
get
on the
some
record
options,
as, this is what I was saying all along. I mean, again, I have not voted for this. I am not voting for it again. I will not support this because not only do I think that there are more prudent ways to spend the taxpayer dollars in the next 5-6 years that we have to knuckle down and really make some difficult decisions about, instead of potentially earmarking, not like the mayor said, we're up to $110,000 that may go nowhere, right? That's a mill, right, in this city. That's a lot of taxpayer dollars. That probably goes a long way for the stormwater utility fee that we have to make up, right? So there's a lot of ways to spend this money. And knowing that along the way, I've vocalized several times that I would be interested in supporting this if there's a way to get it out from the outskirts of our city and also through the most expensive area to put a trail in our entire city is probably where they want to put it. I get that that's their plan, but I repeatedly vocalized that I'd like to see something different, and I was never told anything other that can't happen. And now we're being told not only did we get this grant, but now, by the way, you might have to repay this $70,000 in 10 years. I mean, so personally, and I know this is gonna sound offensive, and I don't mean it to be offensive to anybody, because I have absolutely no idea who to direct it to. It feels like this is being crammed down our throats. And again, I've never supported it, and I'm not going to, but if I did support it, I would really feel like this is being crammed down my throat.
I don't think it's been crazy.
And do we-
That's my opinion, that
That's
is
just-
my
that's
opinion,
just-
that's how I
telling you
feel.
my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think it's being crammed out of us, because we've been talking about it for months.
So
Ever since
if we
went
would
on
have
council.
known we would have to repay this, would we have went for this grant?
I don't know. That's, and I can tell you that I'm not pleased to sit here and have to present this agenda item because I wasn't in control. And I can tell you that I feel very comfortable that at the time we asked the council to submit the grant application, we were not aware of that requirement. We became aware of that after the grant was submitted. So you would have been faced with a similar choice because you would have already, at the point that the staff became aware, from what I've been able to document, the grant application had already been submitted. So it would not have been a question on the funding of that. And so,
It won't affect your vote one way or the other. You're right.
And this has to be decided on by when, Laura?
well, they're looking for us to obligate our funds. I can get a final confirmation date, but they're ready to move the projects forward that they've committed funding to. So everybody, I mean, they have turned down applicants for funding because our projects have been awarded, and so we're at that point where we're really just truly signing the documents that would commit the $39,000 that the city had committed previously to the grant, through the grant application project as our matching funds.
So can I ask, like, why won't KDOT just let Mark handle this? Why are they electing to oversee this project directly instead of letting Mark? This is kind of more in Mark's wheelhouse, and Mark has been engaged in this a lot more than KDOT. So now why is KDOT stepping in and saying, nope, we're gonna oversee it, Mark can't?
And I don't, do you have a better perspective on that, Glenn? I mean, you've sat through
Yeah,
all of
so,
the application meetings.
yeah, so a lot of the reason
Why
that.
don't you, if you would, why don't you come down to the
Sure. So a lot of the reason that we've had these problems with the grant, the late notice as far as the requirement that this be paid back, and the fact that KDOT's getting involved directly, is that federal funds very rarely go to support preliminary engineering of a project. As a general rule, local planning is done with local funds, engineering is done with local funds. A lot of times right away they try to push that into local funds as well. This particular program we got the money through is the first time in the Kansas City region and one of the few times, as far as I can tell from hearing from KDOT, that they really fund preliminary engineering on a wide scale. Typically it's small towns, big highways. The only two, I actually skimmed through some stuff, the only two exceptions I could find were Edwardsville, which was kind of weird, and then a trail crossing over the Missouri River. That's the only times that are documented, at least from what I reviewed the last few years, that they funded preliminary engineering.
So was Mark on the original docket to handle those? And, well, obviously KDOT didn't take it over the Missouri River, but Edwardsville, did they take over to oversee it in those cases?
I don't know what the story is there, but what we heard was just that because this is not a common occurrence, KDOT wanted to oversee it directly. Because that involves different selection processes, different obligations like this, and the fact that KDOT first repays the federal government, and then, you know, it's their money that goes, and we kind of give to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it just
They're the ones
seems,
that are on the hook.
So what do you make of our special preferential treatment on our preliminary engineering on this section?
It's a good question. You know, I think there are a lot of, as we've heard, there's a lot of interest in finishing this trail.
That's what I think. I
That
think
kind of
if you,
show through.
that's my suspicion. Look, there's no
I agree.
speculation being passed around here as fact, so here's my speculation. I think that if you get your preliminary engineering to be treated as uniquely as Glenn has just laid it out for us, my suspicion is once you have a plan, you have a number, and you're saying, okay, this is a plan we can live with, and we've got to be able to live with it. you're gonna find folks that are very anxious to complete this from a regional perspective. And my guess is you will find more folks out there willing to fund this than we've either found originally or currently or whatever.
I think we could probably leverage some of that interest in the future, for sure. It's a high priority for them. For us, it's a matter of finance. So, but, you know, that's.
I don't necessarily know if that is the majority of the folks that live in Mission don't feel that this is a high priority. I think there is.
Oh, no, it's a matter, but if they, on money, you know, we have to have the
No, I
money.
get that. I get money and priorities, but in terms of what the priorities are, to say this trail is not a priority, I think is inaccurate. So, look, I'm for it. I think we take it to council. But before we move too much further procedurally, I mean, I know Debbie and Susie are for this, and I'm happy to bring it up under new business if we don't want to discuss it anymore this evening.
Arcie,
I don't recommend to take it to council.
I'll say take it.
and you're Susie, aren't you? Are you
Well, I
Susie?
don't think I can
He's
vote
been- I don't
twice.
think you
No,
can
you're
vote
on
twice.
the
You're all
top.
on your own.
Oh, okay.
Because you're all, remember, we're all committee of the whole now.
Oh, that's right,
Everybody's on the
okay,
same
thank
committee.
you. Yeah, okay. I vote to take it to council.
I'm still torn.
It's,
I mean, I do feel like there were things that, you know, made me feel a little more comfortable last time. We spoke about it, but
that are off the table now.
yeah, we're talking about, I just don't know.
Would it help to have any more time to think about it?
Yeah, I do want more time.
Let's go ahead and postpone it then. If, I mean, how much time would Mark allow us to
I don't
sign
have to
this?
ask
Well, if
that
we've got
question.
3 people saying let's take it, and even if you're neutral or no, I mean, right, so it could be a 3-1-1 recommendation to take it to council, is the way I see it.
And if you have any
Me.
questions, just,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's, I mean, it is what it is. And it is unfortunate. It really is unfortunate that at the last minute.
Here's the deal. We're gonna discuss this at council, right?
We are.
And, you know, you always have the opportunity to table a motion if you want to, and if you can get the support, guess what? You can table it, right? You can send it back to committee, you can do whatever you want with it, right?
And we've been discussing this for 2 years, round and round and round with, yes, I
Right,
understand.
including, and the reason why I would say this
Come
has
this
not
far.
been jammed down our throats is that we had a grant. We had money in the bank that we had to give back to build this, right? Because we decided we didn't want to come up with the match
We-
at the time, right? Right? All I'm saying is that this has been on the radar screen.
It's been on the radar
a
for the
long
whole
time.
2 years, yeah. But, you know, you do have to also understand, Dave, that it is disconcerting to be told
I
at the
get it,
last
and that was the
minute,
very
yes.
first thing I said. It's a
Sure.
surprise, for sure. One that, of course, nobody likes surprises, but in the whole scheme of things, over a 10-year horizon, $70,000 on the line, absolutely, it's still.
This thing has been a surprise. I've learned something new every time we've debated this. In 2 years, I've learned something new every time. So it's a surprise a minute for me, which is kind of disconcerting because you think you'd know the ins and outs by then. Okey dokey.
That ought to be a lively discussion in 2 weeks.
That one then is,
Not consent.
pardon me?
Not consent.
No, correct, not consent. Mark, sponsor agreement for Tricky Creek Trail Initial Design Grant.
These really just go hand in hand. They're 2 separate documents on the same topic. So because, as Glen was describing, KDOT is taking over a role that is traditionally fulfilled by Mark. Mark wants to still have a seat at the table. I think primarily so that in the future, should those roles reverse and they step into that primary role where they've been on other construction or construction inspection projects, they understand the expectations. So this simply says, yes, they will have a seat at the project table as we go through the process.
And the project management portion of that is, what's that directly entail? I mean, project manager, you get a lot of say-so. Are they just in managing the money?
And who's gonna pick the consultant that gets, so I think that was a big question, who's gonna pick, with all these people now involved, who picks the consultant that's doing the work? That's us, right? Because we're spending the money. We were given the grant.
Yes.
We're in charge of choosing.
Yes.
Sure, people can have a lot of opinions about
kind of both of those. Ordinarily, Mark would kind of choose the consultant, and we would be involved in doing that. In this case, we just have to directly choose the consultant using the federal process, which just involves KDOT has a very long pre-approved list. We have to send out so many letters. It's pretty much our standard process. We just have to document it differently. As to the previous point, this doesn't actually involve any agreement to manage the project. As far as project management concerned, for federal purposes, it's KDOT. Really, it's us. This just says that Mark will have someone participate in that with us. Just kind of seeing the process, keeping Mark informed as far as what our progress is, that kind of thing.
Okay. I guess, where did I see that wording? If it doesn't mean anything, that's fine, I just,
If it's in there, we
Always,
can
yeah.
have that removed. As you can tell, this is also not a standard Mark agreement. It was drafted kind of quickly to make this meeting, so if project management is in there, I think it only should be referring to a project management committee, but if there's anything else, we can have that revised.
okay.
And also so two things at your place. One, I meant to touch on when Pat mentioned earlier, he did have some questions yesterday about debt. So at your place, I left you kind of the 2015 snapshot, which is all of our debt issues and principal and interest payments for the current fiscal year. If you flip it over on the other side, this shows you, it takes all of those debt service obligations, shows you the beginning balance each year through the life of all of our issues, the amount of principal that's being paid down. So that really got to his question to me yesterday about how quickly are we paying down our existing debt. The other thing I left at your place, and based on a question Jennifer had, in looking at this Mark agreement on page 1, under the purpose, it talked about local planning and support of the project as detailed in Exhibit A. Exhibit A was our grant application, so we provided you a copy of that, and I believe this came to the committee. The grant application was in a committee packet.
I'm not actually sure if we made it packet. When it came around the first time, I believe we had partially drafted an application. We were waiting for approval to go any further. I think we had handed out project descriptions the second time Martin brought it up as a discussion item to keep you guys informed.
So this is Exhibit A referenced in the Mark agreement.
Is there anything in this Turkey Creek Trail plan that would bind us to make improvements to Turkey Creek? Or just build the trail?
Build the trail. Well, we would not be making
Only build
stormwater.
the trail, there's absolutely no flood improvements to be made through Turkey Creek, like Miriam did. You know, Miriam made significant improvements to their creek. I don't know if it's still Turkey Creek up there or not, it probably is, right? So, I mean, extensive work was done on that. Are they looking, would that include, is there any expectation that that kind of work be done? Because Lord knows that creek is just ugly.
Now, there may be some of the things that come out in the design process that would contribute to beautification, but it does not include flood control work. I mean, this is designed for the trail, right? And I mean, there may be some things that would keep the trail from flooding, and that's part of, I mean, I don't know, because we haven't done the engineering or the design for that, but no, it's not intended to make stormwater improvements to the degree that you see as the trail goes through Marion.
To give you a little bit of different perspective, the map's not up anymore, but the concept for the map, or for the trail, excuse me, originally came out of the Corps of Engineers study of the Turkey Creek watershed. So their thought was, well, we already have to do all this to keep it from flooding, might as well put a trail in there. And so that was kind of the genesis of the idea.
So is there anything on our radar that we have to do anything to keep the flooding under control down there? Not like up here along Johnson Drive?
Correct.
It's not in a floodplain, huh?
Oh, it is. It's in a floodplain. It's 100% in a floodplain.
Well,
It's all around 635 and 935 is all a floodplain. There's one of these documents that says that. It's square in a floodplain.
Then they have more regulations for that than Okay, does anybody have any questions on the MARC agreement? And if we're not taking Turkey Trail and the Turkey Creek Trail initial design grant on the consent agenda, we probably shouldn't do this.
Thank you. So what are you gonna recommend?
Anybody?
You can put me down, Mark.
Okay. Next is the street program geotechnical services. John, thank you, Glenn.
Very informative.
This program is similar to the program that we formed last year, geotechnical analysis of all the mill and overlay streets. What this does is it generates information regarding the condition of the streets and whether the treatment that we have chosen for them is feasible. Last year we did 2014 through 2016, so we have all those analyses back. This would provide 2017 to 2019, which basically gets us far ahead, far enough ahead in the planning process so that we can plan and move things around based on the information that these reports provide us with. Be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's great that we're finally getting in advance. So that's awesome. Well, 26.
I agree.
That's okay.
Can this be on the consent agenda?
Agreeable with me.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know what you thank you, John. And the next thing is the Community Center Task Force recommendations. It was a wonderful task force. It was really, I hope it was real productive. I learned a lot. And Christy and Laura were extremely helpful and very positive about it, and I really appreciated that. We've come up with some recommendations. I'll read them off to you, and then if you guys want to, would you put a list of them in here, Laura?
They're in the resolution, so if you look at, and we had invited the task force members to join us tonight, but I'm guessing the weather kept anybody who was thinking about attending away, so.
You want to go ahead and read it?
I'm happy to. So if we go down to the whereas clauses, just kind of give us a little bit of history and context for that. Therefore, that's a section 1, that the operating cost recovery goal for the community center be increased from 80 to 90% of annual operating costs for the 2016 budget, and that operating cost recovery goal be increased from 90 to 100% of annual operating costs for the 2017 budget. That the cost recovery goal apply to annual operating costs only, excluding equipment replacement and other facility and capital replacement costs, and that those needs be funded through non-operating revenues, specifically through the use of dedicated sales tax revenues. That staff be given the discretion to achieve those cost recovery goals through a combination of fee adjustments, marketing activities, programming changes, changes in space utilization, privatization or outsourcing, and other expenditure reductions. And then the task force reconvene in a year to sort of review the recommendations that were implemented. So let me back up and just give you a little bit of context for each of those. What we did find, which was different than the benchmarking analysis that we did in 2006-2007, is that at least for our benchmark facilities here in the Kansas City metropolitan area, folks seem to be achieving 100% cost recovery. Now they seem to be doing that also with the assistance in almost every case of non-operating revenues. So dedicated sales tax revenues or other things, which is why I think you see the recommendation coming forward about using those non-operating revenues to support your capital and your facility needs. The other thing is that we had a lot of great exchange of ideas. Some of those things were kind of bulleted points in your action item summary, and then there's some additional detail in the minutes of the task force if you want to go back and look at that. But part of what we wanted to do is expand this over at least a 2-year horizon. Sometimes when you start turning too many dials and changing too many things, you don't get a good sense of which ones are having the greatest impact. So we really want to be able to go into this with changes that we can make that are sustainable for the longer term. I won't suggest that we think it's going to be an easy spot to get to necessarily. I think when we increased our cost recovery from the 60% range to the 80% range several years ago. There was some low-hanging fruit that we were able to kind of pluck off and close that gap a little more easily than what I think this will be, but I think the staff is excited and challenged by the opportunity to look at this, and I think it's great that we have facilities in our area who are accomplishing that. I mean, we don't have to travel very far to maybe share some best practices and good ideas. So the task force did want to get back together in a year so that they could have some feedback on some of the specific recommendations that are made through the budget process. And just have an opportunity. I mean, they spent a tremendous amount of time, and it was really a great group of folks, and we were able to, I think, have the opportunity to work with some business owners and residents and citizens who haven't necessarily participated with us before. So it was really, I think, a productive exercise. We put this on as a discussion item because we wanted you to have time to think about it, and then if you want to bring it back, make any changes or bring it back as an action item, that still gives us plenty of time to start thinking about things for the 2016 budget process.
We've been hitting that 80% recovery.
Yep, you'll see that in the annual report. We're kind of hovered right there. So we have been hitting that.
So how does that 80% impact this sheet we saw earlier?
That it
Or
does
the
not at all.
91 to
Yep.
the 90? It doesn't
Yep.
impact this at all?
That's your capital. So that's everything that's supported by non-operating revenues. So that's either sales tax or your alcohol tax funds that are coming in. So this would be everything that's included in your general fund budget related to the community center.
But sales tax wouldn't be used to help us get to this 90 to 100% cost recovery?
Correct. That's what the recommendation says.
Sales tax would
Would
not
not
be used. So
So-
how are we gonna get there if we're struggling? Are we not getting to the 80% because of the sales tax?
So we're at 80%.
Right.
Right.
Is the sales tax helping us achieve that 80%?
Yes, to a certain extent.
Right.
But I think there's still some capital. What we haven't done, because the sales tax was still new, is we haven't completely separated out all of the capital needs from the operating costs. So now that we have this tracking mechanism and a little more history with the sales tax, we can do that a little bit more. I don't know the answer to that exactly, but that's why we've got to really get out and start talking to some of these other benchmark facilities, because when we really break it down, they're at that 100% cost recovery level. So what are they doing that's different? You know, it's a combination of fee, and our fees are pretty comparable. So I don't think we can get there through a lot of fee increases. So is it programming? Is it other efficiencies that we can find? And we spend a lot of time trying to unravel and match back up other people's budget documents to try to get there. I think you can see what the budget, for example, that we put together this year. We budget at 80% cost recovery, and then sometimes we'll have a fluctuation maybe in a capital expenditure that has kicked us or not allowed us to meet that cost recovery goal. But we're gonna have to but that's the goal. 80% was the goal several years ago. We figured out how to get there. I think it doesn't seem outside the realm of possibilities to get to 100%. If we find differently, we'll come back to you, certainly through the budget process, and say,
I mean, we've had a general fund balance goal as well, right, that we've never met. So I mean,
correct.
I'm just gonna be really interested to see if we move to 100% all of a sudden. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible.
Yeah, that was one of the most exciting things that did come out of it, because they had networked, and Christy and Glen and Laura spent a lot of time with the other facilities, and they were doing it. So they were really positive, because we didn't say, we want a goal of this and this. We came to them and asked them what they thought was feasible, and that's what they came up with. And I thought it was pretty aggressive too, but they were very positive about achieving that. So, and there were a lot of good ideas that came out of that. And thank you.
And I think
Gwen,
we
for
have to
doing
try.
that.
And I will tell you, one of the things that we struggled and really at the end looking at, so Matt Ross, they were at well over 100% cost recovery in 2013, and if they finish the year where the numbers they gave us back in December, they're going to be maybe at a 65 or 70% cost recovery. They weren't very forthcoming about some of the challenges that they
Yeah,
were
there
seeing
must
this
have
year.
been some kind of
So those are the kinds of things we
accounting
need to
difference.
really, understand. Now, I mean, they're doing things, for example, and we really try to account for this, in that maintenance of their facility, for example, is paid for out of a citywide facilities budget that isn't charged against the community center. But we really tried to break those down. We looked at where we have a Parks and Recreation director versus where they have a community center director, and they're operating that truly as a cost center and not as a standalone department. So we tried to make the adjustments the best that we can, and I think we got to a comfort level over this period of time to say, hey, we think we can do better than 80%. And if we can't get all the way to 100 in 2 years, we'll be very clear through the budget process what changes we're making and why we can or can't get there. But we ought to put it out there and move toward it.
Well, it's very admirable. I mean, every percentage that you move closer to 100 is real savings in the budget for sure. So, remind me, when we went from 60% cost recovery to 80, what kind of horizon term was that between those two?
We did it in a year's time.
We did it in a year's time. So the committee thought a 12-month term to get from 80 to 90 realistic because we've done it before?
No,
90 to 100?
we had Laura and
I mean, I think
Christie,
we
we
kinda
left
looked
it
at
up to them to give us a reasonable,
That's good.
because we figured that they're the experts.
Right.
Didn't want to arbitrarily pick a number, we're community people, so we left it up to them to pick it, and they were aggressive with it, and
Well, and I think that,
I
I
thought
mean,
it
it's
was great.
realistically, we've been able to get it 80 with capital blended in that. And so I think that's part of why this first year, being truly able to pull the capital really cleanly out of it, will give us that clear picture about whether that was a realistic goal. But that's a piece of it, because that stayed blended in with some of our.
No, I think
costs.
Amy asked the right questions about that part of it, but then also the creative accounting that goes on at Matt Ross or any of the other centers, because, I mean, it very well may not be apples to apples when somebody says we're at 110% recovery and, we're got this anchor around
Right.
the Cell Powell Center with expenses that are unique. So, well, look, again, if everybody's on board, how can you say it's one of those undeniable truths? How can you say, let's do better, let's bring down cost recovery?
Well,
it
and
was
if-
really wonderful.
If
Yeah.
nothing else, we've identified enough of the specific questions, so when we go sit down at Matt Ross, we can say, this doesn't look right to us when we look at your budget. So, walk us through this. The Olathe, and one that, when we went through the study before, Matt Ross wasn't online, so they provided some good data. Gladstone Community Center was not online in 2006 and 2007. And those are two facilities that have been built since then that appear to be, that are closest in terms of size and scope and amenities offered. Olathe's new community center just came online this year in 2014, so there's not a lot of data, but cost recovery was a very, very, very significant and important part of the discussions for that facility. And so that is also a new resource that we intend to tap into as we go through this process, because they just built it, they've designed it, they don't have a lot of data to support it, but I think that will be important for us to get out there as well.
We're not just 85 to 95%.
Well, I
Instead
just,
of 90 to 100.
well, and what, you're saying, give them a buffer.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
First
know,
year, we can change it next year's budget.
we can.
Well, there's
And,
no
you're out.
penalty.
I
No
just
penalty
asked
if they don't.
Laura and Christie, we have, and like I told them, we've had goals, there were goals from 2005 when we got here 2 years ago, Amy, that we got to. That, I'm not saying you got goals, but you don't always achieve them. It's not, it's a goal. It's not
Right.
necessarily something. And I said I really wanted it to be achievable when I asked them, I just didn't want it to be a goal that we turn over every year just because it's,
Right.
and they said that they thought,
And again,
Do
you
you
know
need
as well
to change
enough to
that?
know if we get into it, and
Right,
we can't
you
get
would
there,
tell
we're
us.
gonna come back to you
Yeah.
and say, we maybe were too aggressive, and here's why.
Right, because we know it's probably not gonna be 100% in 2017, so, it's just a discussion.
Well,
No,
it's
it's up
why
to
I
you to
asked, it's
adopt.
why I asked the question, how long did it take us to get from 60 to 80? Because the last thing I'm gonna do is pass a resolution with goals in it that we're gonna miss in 16 and 17, right? But, look, I respect the work of the task force, and if you guys did the due diligence and you asked folks, you talked to Lori, you talked to Kristen.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I didn't show up for a single
Great.
meeting, right? It had nothing to do with Ted Stone, I just didn't show up to a single meeting, that's a joke. But I respect the work of the task force, and if you guys think you can get there, I mean, more the aggressive the better. The only other discussion I had was, hasn't the community center, I mean, in terms of this letter C, the discretion to achieve cost recovery goals, I mean, those tools that are listed have been kind of arrows in the quiver for a while, right? Okay.
What do we think we're gonna do different?
They looked at we looked at a lot of
This is the
different.
vision, this is the
Yeah.
vision, not the plan, right?
It is. It was just they came up with ideas. I mean, some of this stuff was really interesting, like, computers and for the youth, you go into a library and the computers are stocked. Babysitting, the one thing that they do make money on every year is the youth programs in the summer camps. Summer camps, they actually make a profit on that, but that's a summer camp kind of program. So is there any, but they were doing the cost benefit analysis of some of these things to see. You don't know if it's going to make money or cost money sometimes, if you get. So they were going to have to look at a lot of the flex time. Could they utilize their space better? Because are they hitting the limit of how many people, the membership versus the space, or can we utilize unutilized space and increase our memberships, flex time, daytime versus evening, changing your hours, lots of things to look at that they could mix up. Programs, classes, are they making money? Are they losing money?
Well, if I were a betting woman, I'd say, based on the conversations we had over the last 6 months, senior programming is an area that we've really just started to focus on really in the last probably year and a half, 2 years. And I think there are some really significant revenue potential opportunities there. Is that a fair statement? We've seen that's something, and it doesn't necessarily have an impact on your physical facility, because a lot of that is trips that can be sponsored. But that's an area, as we look at matching up some of our demographics with our relationship with Mission Square and some of the other populations. So I think that's an area where we'll really focus on early on to see what our potential is there. And that's going to involve some marketing. So I think more targeted marketing, and it's always easy to say, well, we just need to add a marketing person on staff. I think we can spend marketing dollars more efficiently by outsourcing. So looking at some of those privatization and outsourcing opportunities. The other big thing that Christy, was through her conferences and things that she's attended is really looking at creating flexible space. So rooms that can serve multiple purposes, and you can flip them, and they just become more functional, as opposed to that's just a conference meeting room space and it may sit open, 4 or 5 days a week. What else can we be programming in that space, and those kind of things. So I think those if I were to say that the low hanging fruit, that's probably the two, right? Is there anything else you would add, Christine? I know you spent a lot of time thinking about all this, but
Just trying to also target market that tween group, the group that we're not currently getting.
Is the majority of the shift from 80 to 90 to 90 to 100 the capital realignment?
No.
Okay.
So I think when we looked at the actual dollar amount, I didn't bring the minutes from that meeting, the dollar amount for, the dollar amount that was the subsidy, if you will, for 13, it seemed to me was $350,000.
Yeah.
Roughly.
4350.
So we're looking at $100,000 to probably $150,000 worth of savings to close that gap in the first year. It'd be a comparable month. It was about, in dollars, about $350,000.
To go from 80% to 90% recovery.
No, that was the dollar amount that was 80%. So that was the 20%, right?
Got it.
To get us, right. So in order to cut that back, we need to get to 100%, we need to figure out how to find $300,000 to $350,000.
Got a goal.
Well, I think the task force did a really good job on this thing, and kudos to the mayor for assigning the task force to look into
Great
it.
I didn't do any work, they did it.
Really,
Very
Christy and Laura and Ben and Glen, holy cow.
Yes.
Yeah,
One is
you
the
guys-
master of charting.
It was really, they
His
gave
eyes
us
were
good
bugging me trying
information
to sort
and,
through all that.
The yoga
lot of comparisons for us to go through, and it was really interesting, so I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and I think the other thing too, Dave, to your point maybe, is that the task force really added at the meeting, they added the bullet point about meeting again, and so I think that gives us another touch point with that group. So if we think we can get there, if we think we need to extend the time frame to get there, we can have that conversation with the same group of citizens and business owners that helped us formulate the first set of recommendations, so they don't feel left out of, that conversation on an ongoing basis.
Terrific.
So, any changes to the resolution? If not, then we'll bring it back in March as an action item.
Sounds good to me.
Let's talk Google.
Google Fiber update with Emily Randel.
That sounds like a
Is
TV show.
that what
TV show.
Can we come up with a jingle or something?
Hi everyone. Just to kick off, just to catch you up, we had a kickoff meeting with the Google Fiber team, a team of hundreds it seemed, last Monday, and they are revving up. So, they've been kind of a sleeper group with us for a while, but that was their getting their plans in order. And so we just set the groundwork last week with who's who, introductions, this is, who you go to for this, is, we're engaging in this process now, and so we just needed to kind of square up, and they walked us through their construction process that they've used in other communities, and we kind of got a very general scope for their progress. The first step of that is the make-ready process, where they're going to assess all of our utility poles that they'll need to use in the process and make sure they can accommodate the types of fiber lines and weight varying and attachments, hookups, etc. So they're doing all of that assessment and work now. That's the first step of their game, and it lasts a number of weeks. Power Electric is working on that piece, and so you may see around town just a simple lane drop with some utility pole work happening. That's the first stage of the game. Then after they get those poles all squared away and they're for sure understanding kind of the grid that they're working on within Mission, they'll start doing some ring work, laying fiber and connecting the pieces. I don't want to get into too much detail of that. We want to have maps for you and some visuals and things like that we don't have now. We'll meet again tomorrow, and then the team will meet regularly every 2 weeks throughout the process. So I think communication channels are set up to be pretty good. We will do the rallies to bring the neighbors up to speed, which they've been waiting for since a while ago. And we don't have additional information about that, but I think we'll hear more about that tomorrow, just kind of their model and how they've done it in other places and how we can kind of play a role in getting that word out. So I think.
Yeah, so I think we're on round one of what sounds like will be 4 rounds to get through conclusion. So this is the construction and build out, and then they have a different team that we'll be working with for the rally of the fiber hoods. And then once the fiber hood and the rally's closed, then they have a team that connects from the backbone, if you will, to the subscriber's home. And then there's another team that comes and does the work that's required inside of the homes. So
Kind of a rough timeline on that.
we're very non-committal on the rally and beyond piece.
Yeah.
So
The piece that actually touches the residents that we care the most about, they're very vague. But they did say that the majority of the construction, early summer-ish maybe is there. So, they're going to be, and we have these meetings all set, so every 2 weeks we should know a little bit more and a little bit more. And truly, maybe we'll know more even tomorrow. So, we'll see.
So the Sure West thing was extremely painful.
Before my time. But I've heard stories.
So when you talk about construction, you talk about utility poles and laying fiber, like what is that? And I think we probably ought to get in front of communicating with the community as much as possible, so people understand. Are people going to be tracing in my backyard? Who's in my backyard? Are they going to be ripping a pole out, putting a new pole in? Which I highly doubt. But are they going to be putting a box in? Are they going to be laying fiber? Like all that.
Tearing up my yard.
Well, that's
Actually,
Right.
everything you listed, the answer is yes.
Oh God.
There are poles that are coming out and being replaced,
Oh.
which is in my opinion, a good thing, because if these poles are in such bad shape now,
We don't disagree.
We get it up.
you're getting an upgraded pole. So, which is, in actuality, probably a good thing. The actual pole work itself won't be the invasive type stuff. You know, KCP&L comes out, replaces wood poles in and out. Really not that invasive. The invasive part is the actual undergrounding of the conduit for fiber to go in. And that's what the deal with SureWest was.
I guess I didn't realize there was gonna be undergrounding. Because I thought we talked about with this with SureWest, that we weren't, it wasn't supposed to be as painful.
Well, I think we haven't seen, and that's what I think we're hoping to see tomorrow, is a map. They have apparently mapped where in Mission they will be going aerial and where they will be going
Yeah, a
underground.
lot of it's
Do we know where those big, huge, like, I don't know, those big, huge boxes are
The
gonna
hut?
be?
Well, the hut, we know, we already approved
Right.
a year ago.
Right.
So that's the
And
other
that's only
thing.
one big, huge hut.
In the
our
mission,
city.
that's it.
And that's it in
Yeah.
Mission. And then they will have, I think they told us 16 cabinets,
Oh,
They are
which are
16 by 16 by 30.
I just hope they're not in the exact same places the SureWest ones are.
Now, which SureWest ones are you talking about? Are you
The
talking about
green things that
pedestals?
sit up all the ground.
Okay.
Because how, if somebody would like, let's have, first of all, they don't like the SureWest thing being there. And now you're putting, what is it, 16 by 16?
By 30.
Inches?
Like a tombstone.
Is that like a tombstone?
I just said that.
Foot and a half?
So I just think we have to be we need to let
Well,
residents know.
and with SureWest, we were strategic in how and where we place some of this stuff. It's on property line, so it's not like dead center somebody's picture window when they look out of their house. All of their things that they connect to, there won't be any pedestals. With SureWest, there were some pedestals where they ran the fiber from the pedestal to the house. All of the Google stuff is flush, so it's all flush with the ground. And they do their best to put those on property lines too, to where they're not dead center right in front of somebody's house.
So these boxes you're talking about would be in the ground too? The 16 by 16 by 30?
No,
Uh,
those cabinets will stick up. What I'm talking about is they have basically it's an underground pedestal, so they can run from the pedestal, run the service to your house.
So those won't be above ground? Underground.
You'll have the 16 cabinets that will be above ground.
There's 16 of them total, or 16 by 16? I'm getting confused
Same,
now.
there's 16 total cabinets, and those are the dimensions.
Okay.
They're really big fans of 16.
30 inches tall,
Yeah.
16 inches wide, 16 inches.
And where are those 16 cabinets going to
We
be?
haven't seen the
We
map
have
yet.
not
We're
seen
hoping
the map.
that we'll see that tomorrow. So
Not
we also
my
haven't
yard.
issued.
Why can't they just do a Wi-Fi?
Right, the cloud.
Yes.
Your point though is great about getting people up to speed. I mean, right, and we can talk more about, what the most painful part was, but they're also talking about how they've improved their process each time they've done this in a different city. And so they're very keen on those lessons learned. So I do think we'll already be smart enough to kind of put out an initial post and let everybody know this is what's happening, but then same as before. I mean, we'll just get better and better details.
Will we send people whose areas or properties affected, like, hey, they're gonna be putting.
Yes, yeah, and they follow the same procedures as they do for KCP&L, and then some. It sounded like you get far out notice, and then you get day of notice, and door hangers, and the whole nine. So they were preaching that to us, not
They
the other
said
way
that they bring
around.
example door hangers,
Yeah.
just so we
So
had
we-
an idea of
yeah.
how it read and what it said and how all that worked.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard from residents in other cities that it's kind of a one-time opportunity, either you're in or you're out, and if you're out, there's no way to get back in.
Right.
So if that's true, we probably can't emphasize that point enough.
Correct.
Because folks will,
Right.
well, I don't
Signing up
know.
our
No,
We're
as
still on
someone
the
who
fence.
didn't
Let me get back
understand
to
that
you.
and
Let
was
me-
out
right.
in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
and they couldn't, now, I asked that question specifically because I said, it's not clear, it was not clear in your
Right.
literature. And it's not clear in they don't have a plan. They can't tell you when your next opportunity.
Which is just so crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
We
you
were in
can
there
sign up for Sure West or Time Warner Cable or DirecTV. It's
And
like
you work
that.
under the assumption if it's
Yeah.
right there outside of your
Right.
door, why can't you?
Right,
You just
if it's in my
call them.
neighborhood, why can't you?
Unfortunately,
I agree.
They don't
Yeah,
come
so we're
from
very
the
keen on that.
And I think it's another advantage of us going after other cities, because there are people around, neighbors, they've heard other stories, that they'll be more savvy to it also. But I mean, we had, so that was August of 2013, we had our, trip to the Google Fiber space. And, we really had a pretty healthy dose of interest ever since then. And, it'll be, the rallies will make a difference, I think.
Yeah.
We'll just,
Thank you so much for keeping us up to date, because people are always
The
asking.
in or out is the city, right?
No.
the individual.
Individual fiber.
Individual
So we
to
haven't
the
seen
home.
how big they, so we haven't seen where their fiber hoods will be. So once we start to move into that plan, then we can really help target the communication.
Because once they come in that, what they were saying is they come in and they just do the whole thing, and then they don't, and then they're
They
moving
don't
on.
come
They
back.
don't come back for one little house hookup in here and there and there.
Yeah, so you
They're-
sign
they're-
up during the
they're not.
rally, or it could be 2 years. It could be.
Yeah.
Before
So
they come
what'll
back.
be the upsetting part is if you don't take the service, you have the box in your yard.
Right.
which could
Well, like the Sure West people,
Particularly
I
if
mean, how many people went with Sure West when they came,
If
Why
you-
not?
If you let them put the box in
I know.
your yard, you probably get free service for 2 years.
Oh, I've never been so frustrated in my life. I got a high frustration level, guys, I really do.
Okay.
Thank you so
we'll
much,
keep you
Emily.
updated. Like we said, we're having bi-weekly meetings, so.
I
Thank you.
put forward that we close the CDC meeting.
Done.
Second?
Next.
Yeah, ready to start the finance negotiation? Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And the first one is the 2014 annual report. How are we gonna do this? We're gonna name by it, so that's why I assumed it was you, but there's no.
Yes, I didn't put my name on it, but it is me. This is something we started 2 years ago. We used to have, most of our departments did their own standalone annual reports, and so you had to go to too many documents and didn't really give us, you, the citizens, anybody who was interested, a more comprehensive picture of what we were doing as a city. So tried to transition to this format a couple of years ago, and it's a work in progress, but we think it really helps to kind of communicate where we've been, where we're going, and becomes really the first step in our annual budget process. So again, we really try to just welcome the citizens and the residents and encourage them to look at this, use it, ask questions, hit the highlights of the year. We include our organizational structure. We will change out the page. We had Councilmember Quinn's telephone number wrong, so we'll change this out. Get that corrected. So then we move really kind of into the general fund revenues. And what we did is we elected to show a 5-year historical perspective here. And I think we talked about this in the last couple of years, but we have used for many years a 5-year financial forecasting methodology looking forward. But I think it's also, this helps us put some things in context of where we've been. So we really are looking, as we move into the budget, at more of a 10-year horizon. So general fund revenues, which is the main operating fund of the city, and it hovers between 10 and 10.5 million for the last several years. If you look at the revenue side, the line has been pretty flat since 2010. Property taxes are up slightly, very slightly. Collections over last year. I think we'll see another bump when we look at this report for 2015, because you'll recall that we kept the Mohawk Park mill levy in the general fund. So you'll see an uptick that had been going for debt service there. Sales and use tax, we saw a fairly big spike. I think the number last year was closer to 3.6 million. Again, as we talked about that at our work session, that was an unexpected bump in use tax receipts, and I think primarily driven by some equipment that was purchased by AT&T. So can't expect that number to hold. That was probably a one-time or once every several year kind of look. Franchise fees relatively stable. Fines and fees was down. We've been on a downward trend. We'll look at that a little bit more in the police department and the court charge. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. We've talked about that, we've planned for that, we've budgeted for that. Parks and Recreation revenues, actually we had an uptick and I think that was primarily due to the pool, and we also saw some recovery in the summer camp revenues and things. I think we were at about 1.6 million for the 2013 revenue. So that's always a positive direction for that, and all other revenues are kind of holding steady. So we don't really expect any dramatic changes from 14. We didn't into our 15 budget. I think we revised our fine and fee numbers downward a little bit. So we'd expect the graph to stay fairly flat. When you look at the pie graph, I think we're still, one of the things that we talk about frequently is just diversification of revenues and how important it is not to have all of your eggs in one basket. We're still probably a little heavy in the sales and use tax category. That's not uncommon. Most cities do rely on that, but it's just an important thing to kind of keep an eye on and make sure you're maintaining some balance. On the expenditure side in the general fund, we continue to see that maybe a little bit differently than some of our other neighboring communities, that we really have 3 Ps that are important to us: public safety, public works, and parks and recreation, as evidenced by the percentage investment in those service delivery areas. So in 2014, our general fund expenditures were about 9.6 million. Public safety and municipal court continue to be the largest operating budgets, followed by Parks and Recreation and Public Works. So again, you can kind of see the chart at the bottom, that 5-year trend. The bump in 2010 was when we had that specific drawdown of general fund balance to restructure existing stormwater debt. And so then you can see after that it really has kind of leveled off, and actually we've seen some slight decreases. Regular full-time employees have held fairly constant between 68 and 70 employees.
And does that include the unstaffed positions, or would the unstaffed positions push this above 70?
No, that includes everything that we've budgeted for.
Okay.
The only thing this doesn't include would be any of our part-time staff at the community center or the outdoor pool. When we move into the police department, as I mentioned, it continues to be our largest operating budget. We track Part 1 and Part 2 crimes in the police department. Part 1 crimes are the most serious, including homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and arson. Our Part 1 crimes decreased by 12% in 2014. Part 2, and that was driven largely by decreases in burglary, auto thefts, was our biggest decrease in larceny. Part 2 crimes are drug offenses, simple assaults, forgery, disorderly conduct, criminal threats, etc. We saw a 29% decrease in Part 2 crimes. 2014 saw our lowest crime rate in the last 5 years, and we think it probably goes back further than that, but definitely in the last 5 years. So that's a positive, really positive trend. Calls for service were similar to 2013, and we've remained fairly constant. I think if you flip over to the next page with there, you can kind of see calls for service really hover around the 10,000 per year range. This one then just shows you your major Part 1 crimes in a little bit different way. We've tracked and kind of looked at, as we've looked at the citation numbers, you can see some pretty dramatic variation in that graph. Also expected and discussed. I think that one of the important things that we look at and kind of keep in mind is we kind of like to look at that traffic enforcement activity and our accidents, and I think you can see that we haven't seen a spike in our accident rates with a decrease in traffic citations. But the chief will also tell you that the number of citations issued does not mean that we've had a reduction in the number of actual traffic stops. In fact, that number is up, or
it's gone up over the last 2 years. The tickets have gone down.
Tickets have gone down, traffic stops have gone up, and we think that's one thing that can help contribute to that decrease in crime rate. You want to have that public safety presence, and not every traffic stop results in issuance of a citation.
So when we talk about calls for service, I mean, it's over 1 per resident, you know?
Right.
Do we have, so that doesn't include traffic stops? Does that include traffic stops?
That's totally separate. That's dispatch calls for service.
Got it.
People calling needing our help.
Do we have people who are kind of repeat offenders? Like, is there somebody on this list that calls 100 times a year or something? I mean,
Not 100, but yeah, we have a lot of repeat calls. Several.
It does seem like a lot for a town this size. as safe as you feel.
I call 2 or 3 times a month.
No, Mary, probably.
If we look at municipal court, again, the fine and fee revenue that we're tracking here sort of mirrors the citation graph, which is exactly what you would expect. Although the percentage decrease isn't the same, we tend to be writing the fines and fees that we're collecting maybe for more significant offenses, the DUIs, some of those kinds of things. We continue to push online payment. The decrease in the total number of citations has certainly relieved some of the physical space pressures on this building with our municipal court dockets. We've also increased the online ticket payment. The more we can get people to pay and not show up here, we can continue to kind of alleviate that pressure. We've increased that more than 170% since 2010. Now we also lowered the fee to encourage that, so it went from $20 online convenience fee to $3. But we had it at $20 initially to repay for design of the system. So once we paid for that, we were able to kind of lower that.
What do other communities do? What are their closer fee? They're closer to 3?
We're closer to 3.
Oh.
So we're more consistent, which helped drive the traffic there. And then we started several years ago using a collections process. We don't get great collection rates, but we're really only turning those people who are probably never going to pay us or the collection agency over to collection. So we're still getting a higher percentage than we would if we just continued them, or it's better use of time. It doesn't cost us anything, and let the collection agency chase them. Again, total cases filed. Flip to the next page. This will just kind of show you a breakdown of the non-traffic cases that were filed in municipal court. You can see that DUIs are at the top of that list. That's an important area of emphasis for our department. You can also see that disposed of cases stays, hovers somewhere between probably 85 and 100%, which is good. We don't want to keep people in our court system longer than they need to be. Moving into the Public Works Department, obviously the most visible project in 2014 was Johnson Drive. It's now been substantially completed. I think we're all familiar with that, about a $10.6 million project that had $2.8 million in federal grant funds and another $2.85 in county assistance road system funds. Our 2014 street program that has been in place since 2011. In 2014, we did 1.6 miles of mill and overlay and 3 miles of chip seal application. The chip seal application was a new treatment for us. It will be our treatment, seal treatment in 15 as well.
Some received in some parts.
So well received in some parts, not in other parts. I think John has been working, there's a group of public works, where'd you go? Everybody. All of the cities, most of the cities are moving to the chip seal application. So if we bring that forward, the street program, I know, will come forward. But we get a lot of questions, and so we want to make sure, I think maybe underarmed you last year with what you might expect to hear. So
Country road field.
we won't do that again. We talked about with the council, and the council approved the implementation of the cartograph system that really helps with our work orders. We launched the YourGov application. Are you getting much?
Yes, quite a few actually.
And then we've been sharing with you in the city administrator's report that they've started a street ID sign replacement program, which is long overdue. So we hope to get through that in the next several years. The next page really just sort of breaks down and shows you as a percentage of time where our department is spending their time. No surprise, it's in street maintenance, snow operations, grounds maintenance. Park maintenance is really structural park maintenance only. You know that you all approve of mowing contractually. You look at curb and gutter replacement, sidewalk replaced, asphalt patch repair. We see big spikes in the last couple of years because that includes anything that was done on the Martway and Johnson Drive projects. So we get lots of linear feet that add to those totals in the last couple of years. In community development and neighborhood services, I think everybody's familiar with the projects that we've had on the plate, either in various stages of approval. Cornerstone Commons, 31,000 square foot retail development. Lots of progress happening out on that site right now. Big stormwater structures going in, so that's kind of exciting to see that work moving forward. And I think they're moving ahead on schedule. Brinshore, I think we're all familiar with that. And they've submitted their tax credit application, and so we should know by May whether that was approved, and then we'll determine what the appropriate next steps are. The business improvement grant, for the second year in a row, we spent 100% of the funds that were budgeted, which was $25,000. We assisted, interestingly enough, all of the properties that were assisted in the 2014 program were on Johnson Drive. They really stretched from Metcalf through the downtown corridor. I think the maximum grant match is $10,000. We had 2 that took advantage of that. So the other were spread. I think we had 6 properties that were assisted with that. So Stag's Leap. I mean, some you see and some you don't see. The former Apollo building was one of our big grant recipients this year. So we, I think, expect to probably easily spend all the $25,000 that was included in the 15 budget for that. Value of new construction, we measured through building permit activity, and we increased $5.8 million over the previous year for a total annual investment in our community in 2014 of $17 million, driven primarily by the investment in Cornerstone Commons, the Wellstone project, and our outdoor swimming pool project. Code enforcement, we continue to have a very customer service oriented philosophy for code enforcement. We're in our 3rd year running of the voluntary compliance rate of 97%. So lots of work to be done, but our staff does a great job in the carrot versus the stick approach. Rental inspections, we do have, as you know, the multifamily interior inspection program. We license and inspect 19 multifamily complexes in Mission, and we license 349 single-family residences. We don't do interior inspections on those units, but they are required to have a rental license annually. In our community assistance program, we spent over $53,000 through the community rebate. There were 56 residents that took advantage of that. Our Mission Possible Cleanup program, where we helped 24 projects or 24 properties. And we, in our neighborhood grant program, which the total budget for that is only $5,000 for all, and we participated through that program in 18 neighborhood events in 2014. So great presence in the community through that. If you look at the next page, kind of their charts and graphs, really the only thing that probably jumps out at you is the dip in the assistance program spending in 2011. That was a result of revised income guidelines. So aren't necessarily helping fewer people, but we looked at sort of being able to stretch the dollars further. On the Park and Recreation side, I think everybody's familiar with our Mission Family Aquatic Center project, funded in part by the 3/8 cent sales tax, well attended. We've talked about membership increase 360% to 998 annual memberships. Have we had our check from the Super Pool Pass program yet? No. So we've always had to write checks to other cities, and we're actually, I think we're going to get a check this year. So
I know we will get a check. Awesome. It should be coming from Roland Park.
So we'll continue to, watch that and promote that. But I think it was a great investment. We were able to do that through a very successful design build project process that was actually received an award from the Design Build Institute chapter here in Kansas City. Health insurance memberships, we continue to see an increase in health insurance memberships for the community center. We get a per fee visit. They're not very high and they're capped, so it's not a revenue generator for us. But again, the department started orienting new classes toward that audience, and I think that's a demographic where I think we have some additional revenue opportunities like we were talking about before. And then pickleball. Has anybody gone over to play pickleball?
I saw it.
Okay.
What is it?
I heard that a lot of people are playing it.
They
A
are.
paddle sport, sort of
That's
badminton,
tennis,
tennis,
badminton.
ping pong.
Just as long as Dan isn't taking good notes here, I'll tell you that the pickleball players are worse than swim team parents.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Really?
Don't tell me the
Pickleball.
Pickleball players.
Well, they were serious. And I was like,
They are
They
serious.
take it very seriously.
Oh, so it's a fun spectator sport?
Yeah. There's like 6 different balls you can buy, and if you don't have the right ball,
Okay, Gracie, I'm gonna go over there and see.
Don't you worry, I know which one's the right one.
What night
now.
is it on?
It's Monday through Friday from 12:15 to 3:15.
Oh.
And on Saturday mornings from 11:30, or from 9:30 to 11:30. So get down there and
Put it
play.
on a court.
Those kinds of
It was on
things.
the,
Yeah, it's
on
like
the
a-
basketball
it's like
court,
bad-
about, I think it's 10
badminton
hairs as
sized
big
court.
as, yeah, that,
Badminton. Says it right here.
Well, net like that.
like a tennis net.
Yep, tennis net.
Cool.
We'll have to have our next meeting on the pickleball.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then if you just look at, we just shared some revenue numbers and membership numbers. You've seen kind of a drop in the memberships, and I think that maybe we pulled the insurance memberships out of, we were calculating those in, and they really shouldn't be counted as annual memberships because they're just paying that per visit fee. So our numbers, you're gonna see it, we'll have to even out those numbers a little bit to kind of match up more closely. You see what happened with municipal pool memberships. And then the community center cost recovery, you'll see, we've hovered around the 80%, and I can tell you, since 2010, 77% this year was the actual percentage. That does include some capital. We had some big HVAC items that we ended up having to replace this year that impacted that. So we haven't gone back and really, as I said, kind of squared those up, but we've been right around that 80% cost recovery goal. Infrastructure revenues, I think everybody's familiar with the move over the last several years to dedicate to more transparent, dedicated revenue streams for stormwater, streets, parks and recreation. And this chart really just kind of details those. Didn't see really any tremendous fluctuation in any of those, although both on the street sales tax and the parks and recreation sales tax, our collections exceeded what our projections were. So the sales taxes are performing better than expected. So with that, be happy to answer any questions tonight or moving forward.
Any questions? I think this is great. I love that it's very succinct. I think it gets to the points that people probably care about the most. The only one thing I have is this org chart. It looks like, no offense to everybody, but that the public information officer, the city clerk, and the city administrator are all the same level.
Okay.
So, how are you?
You can put it on.
Because I was like, I thought don't they report to the city administrator? So I get it's kind of hard. I get it, sorry. But it does kind of weird. But I absolutely love the resident submission being at the top. That's important. Because in a company I've worked at recently, we put our clients at the top, and then we report to the clients. So I like that a lot. So I think this is great. And I appreciate everybody's time in putting it together. I'm sure it's not a quick thing.
That'll be on the website, and then is there any other access to it?
Yeah, we can probably post it and blast it out through or drive people to the website. And we'll send you a new website on two QUINN. 297, no, 207. Okay.
Okay, so we're ready to move on to the DWI ordinance. Chief Hadley?
Okay, so there's two different ordinances. DUI, everybody knows about DUI, and it's regulated by the state. Our city has what's called driving while impaired, and our city's had that ordinance since 1980. There's no penalties defined by our city ordinance for that, and when that happens, it reverts back to what you guys passed in August, which is the standard traffic ordinance book. And the fine for driving while impaired is $500. So if I take Pat, and Pat has a DUI from previously, and then we stop him and we arrest him for driving while impaired. Driving while impaired is 0.05 to 0.079, so it's just below the DUI. If I arrest him for that, the fine for that is $500, but Pat has a problem with drinking and driving and stuff like that. If we amend our city ordinance to mirror what DUI and those penalties are, then it enables our court to be able to address Pat's problems with a higher fine than $500. So, but
This is for somebody you caught multiple times and is skirting the.
it can. So, like I said, if Pat has a DUI and a DUI, the fine for DUI in our city court is more than $500, Pat gets arrested for driving while impaired because Pat has a problem. This is going to allow the court, the prosecutor, and the judge to be able to fine Pat appropriately, as opposed to just fining him $500 or less. And we got some input from Dave Martin, the city prosecutor, who's here too, so if you guys have questions of him. But since 1980, there hasn't been any penalties in our ordinance for this.
That can be a first offense. You don't have to have had a previous DUI to get it. DWI.
Right. So if you're driving down the street and you're .06 and you're not quite to DUI, the officer has the ability to either give you a ride home, find a ride for you, or arrest you for driving while impaired. Not every city in Johnson County has that ordinance, but some do. But it's a tool that we use from time to time. We've used it 74 times in the last 5 years.
And do most cities who have both of the ordinances make them similar, like the penalties similar like we're proposing, or do we know?
That I don't know. I know this came up through the court. Dave, do you happen to know?
I don't know.
We can certainly find.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
There's people that, at least on the Missouri side, I don't know how Kansas works, but you get DUIs, a couple of them, or whatever. To be able to drive again, they have to have like a tube they blow in or whatever to even start their car. What are those set at? In other words, if they blew .05, could they start their car?
For our driving while impaired, and Dave might be able to answer this better than me because that's the penalty phase, but I know under the DUI ordinance it's very specific. But driving while impaired.
Yeah, we don't use that on the driving while impaired.
No, but I'm
No,
just
but
saying,
your
if the
question
guy
is how,
has done
if
that,
you blow
he's-
anything, will your car start? Or
How
what's the
since-
threshold that
Right.
you have between 0 and something that
How
your car
sensitive.
would start?
So you've had a DUI, you've had the .08 before.
That machine's
Now
on
you
your
got
car.
Machine.
Yeah, how sensitive those are, because there's
So you
some
think
out.
you're good, you blow in, you're like, oh, I'm good, car started, and then you pull him over.
So
and-
maybe Pat can follow up on that topic
Sounds like
later, so he can figure out what he's doing. I don't know.
That's what you're doing
Can
wrong.
advise your Missouri license.
Yeah.
I was just curious. You know.
Yeah, no.
So you think
I
you're driving
know-
okay? and-
Right.
I believe
Before we
it.
get into that,
Yeah.
let me ask you a hypothetical. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
No, I think those machines, to answer your question, they're very sensitive, but everybody knows that there's alcohol and NyQuil and stuff like that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think it has to reach a certain threshold. But for a juvenile to get a DUI, it's .02.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so it's not very much, but juveniles shouldn't be drinking anyway.
True.
Yeah.
So any questions on this? Kind of my 2 cents are, I think driving while impaired or while intoxicated, under the influence, whatever, is something we probably don't want to mess around in our city. So I think taking a hard stance on this is probably, I think,
I'd
a
like
good
to see the
thing.
revenue.
I don't care about the revenue.
Dan wants you to repeat that. That's Pat Plan, Quinn.
913-207.
Damn, I got the phone number saved out.
Do you have a recommendation to take this to
Just
council?
Yes.
Consent? Thank you. Okay. All right, moving on. Oh wait, he's up next. Purchase of mobile vision server and booking room DVR.
It's a lot of
It's a lot.
acronyms.
Is it?
So, to make this as simple as possible, we have a computer that's in our computer room that all of our in-car, all the videos from our cars downloaded in this computer. It has 2 terabytes worth of storage, and it holds those videos from the cars for about 4 months. And then those videos fall off. Now, we burn copies of those videos on DVD, and we have them downstairs archived. So, that computer has been out of warranty for 2 years, and we cannot upgrade that system at all. So that's a problem. So if that computer system goes out, I can't download the videos from the cars. And I can't call the company and tell them to send me a replacement because it's out of warranty. So if we don't replace it, and then the cars don't download anymore because the storage is full, and we have a major incident and it's not on video, then we have a problem.
It's not even fair to the other departments, is it, man? You just come up here with public safety. Done, man. I mean, we gotta replace the elliptical.
Yeah, the elliptical.
Sorry,
we put videos on there.
That's next part.
So, but to condense this for you, that's one system. This was all budgeted for last year. We want to hook body cameras that was budgeted for last year into this total package. But we didn't spend the money last year because we wanted to make sure that the body cameras were the right ones and that the servers are the right ones, because I don't want to come back to you guys and say, hey, we bought the wrong piece. And we wanted to do this all as a package deal. Now, the state last year, we got awarded $4,500 from the state to put towards this project. They were nice enough to extend us through January. We're having problems getting the body cameras that we want to run through our trial and error process. The state said, hey, you have to spend this money, which is why you see this computer and the booking room camera that will download all those videos. So if we have an incident booking, it all goes to the same computer, and right now it doesn't. But that's why you're seeing this in two pieces and the body cameras aren't on here. Is the state is telling us that they're going to withdraw that $4,500 if we don't buy and spend that money. So I'm asking you for a brand new computer to download the videos. It'll have 10 terabytes instead of 2, so that when and if we do go to the body cameras later this year, I don't have to come and ask you for another computer. So that we can make good on that $4,500 from the state and use that money, I'd like to buy that.
Let's do it.
Consent?
Done.
All right, good job, thank you.
And Pat does call 3 times a week, but he calls 911, so so that adds to our calls for service.
Tell Ben to call me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
What's the straw on my card?
Okay, purchase of, resolution for declaring surplus property, your absolute favorite. Any discussion on this item, any questions?
There you go.
Okay.
Consent?
Okay. I do have one question. I thought it was interesting, I thought we rented this equipment for the community center, why?
We do, we just have to still declare it
That's
surplus, so we do. So you can't, we won't sell it back to you, we'll sell it back to the
Okay.
other provider.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, why are we
And next
doing
week you're
this?
coming, the cardio lease will be on the agenda for next month.
You were joking.
Yeah, she's on it, all right. All right,
So
so,
if we're selling all this, we're gonna have to get this up.
Yeah.
oh, sweet. Like, I don't know why 24 Hour Fitness doesn't. I mean, like, literally, they have packing tape. Not even duct tape,
Not smart.
packing tape.
The clear package.
Really?
Clear packing tape. I'm like, seriously, people?
I
This
can
doesn't
show you-
work.
I can show you how you get a membership to the community center.
Seriously, no, I bought my other membership.
Got an application, man.
Sounded like some targeted marketing.
$350,000.
Wow.
Touche. All right, moving on to discussion items. Ward Boundary Redistricting Committee, Laura.
Yes, the mayor announced recently that he had appointed a new redistricting committee. This is the subject that we've been talking about since 2012, recognizing that we need to realign some of our existing ward boundaries to bring them within sort of acceptable deviation limits. It's gone through a variety of processes, both in 2012 and 2013, but with the election coming up in 2016, felt it was important to get that back and hopefully through a process and bring some resolution to that in advance of that 2016 election cycle. So in your packet was a lot of information from the past. So if you want to reorient yourself with all of the conversations that have occurred since 2012, we wanted to provide that to you. I'm in the process of scheduling a time for the committee, which includes Pat Quinn and Arcie Rothrock, and 2 council members and planning commissioners, Mike Lee, Brad Davidson, and Carla Mills. We'll be looking at making a recommendation. We follow the same process. We would go through, that recommendation would come back to the city council. You would set 2 public hearings on that, and then ultimately you would redistrict through the approval of an ordinance.
So when do you think so with all these things that have to happen, what's the the end date? When's the date we anticipate bringing it to council?
When can we have that meeting?
That's a good question. Yes, we were trying to get something scheduled this week and we blew everybody's schedules up and so,
Because I had to go shoot.
yes, you had to go shoot tomorrow night.
Too.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I'm hopeful the group can have their first meeting next week and then we'll have a sense of how much time I think they might need to get a recommendation pulled together. I think there's a lot of the background
Do we
information.
think it's
with
December?
demographics.
Do we think it's next
No,
January? Do we
No,
think it's the
it needs
summer?
to be really in advance of the,
So when does it have to be done by?
needs to be done 30 days prior to the, election, no, it has a
Filing
filing
deadline.
deadline.
Which is January 2017.
Yeah. So I think we're thinking that certainly we could have this potentially wrapped up by early summer,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yes.
Ask those people.
Right, so just wanted to thank Laura for putting all the background information in the packet for those who may have not been around for all the healthy, wonderful discussions we have about it, so I think it's very beneficial and helpful. Okay.
And one question, out of curiosity, the current task force makeup, how does it differ from, I can't remember who was on that the original time, because I know Pat was and Mike Lee was.
Well,
You said
Mike
Carter
Lee
Miller.
was
Just the
Davidson.
two, I think those two are the ones who are on the
How many were on the original task force?
About the same.
There were 5. So 2 folks carried over, Pat and Mike Lee, and then Carla Mills, Davidson, and Arcie. Got it. All right. Well, we'll look forward to your recommendation.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the community for all ages? Emily?
This is, just to catch you up to speed, there's been a fair amount of activity since we last talked to you about communities for all ages in October of last year. If you recall, that was wrapping up a group that we had involved in this project through Mark, but it was Mission's own task force that was a pilot community, put a lot of time in writing these topics that target how city delivery, city service delivery changes when demographics change. And as baby boomers are aging, we'll have a larger percentage of Mission's population who are over the age of 65 in the next 20 years. We were just, the region as a whole, with the help of Mark organizing us a bit and some grant dollars, are looking at kind of how we address those issues. It's new for everyone nationwide, and so we're just diving in. So the work that we did in 2014 was one round of grant funding. Mark received an additional round of grant funding from the Pfizer Foundation to continue the work. So really, just keep moving through these types of questions. The mission signed on, so what they're doing in phase 3 is really just trying to acquaint everyone with the concepts, the demographic information, needs are changing, city services impact those needs, what are we gonna do? And so they invited cities again to participate in this third phase in 2 tracks, one being technical assistance and one being a recognition program. So there are different communities across the region who are attacking this differently. We opted, following your recommendation in October, to continue on. We signed on as a technical assistance city, and we wanted to extend this information into staff. So we decided that staff needs to really be familiar with these kinds of concepts. The checklist that was created in 2014 has different sort of service areas, public spaces, public information, community development, etc. And how do we measure up? How do we deliver what we do now? How can we change, etc. So I hope that's clear. The recognition program is a different track, and it's ongoing, and we can talk about that in a minute. Some cities in the region are doing that concurrently. We're on the technical assistance side, which means we have some access to consultant time to help guide us through the checklist that came about as a result of the 2014 work. So you've all seen this before, but you may not be so familiar, and all it does is just guide a community through the different topics. And so the first step we took was last 2 weeks ago, and we said, let's get department heads together to talk about we're facing this demographic change. What does that mean for us? So we had a really good discussion. It was a pretty lively debate. It was the kind of thing where, let's say you have an older resident in Mission and they do a wellness, their relative calls and says, I haven't heard from my mom. Well, the police department, will you go and do a welfare check on my mother? You know, and we talk about the current volume of that. Well, what happens if that happens, you know, once a day? You know, yeah, right. So what if all of a sudden the amount of energy you're spending on those types of welfare checks, you know, doubles or triples? Same thing with, let's say we do certain things with public works to address a certain level of need from our citizens, but a certain percentage of our citizens, you know, that's not adequate for them anymore as their mobility decreases or, you know, they lack the ability to drive, etc. So these are all theoretical at this point, so that's fair, and there's not a whole lot that's concrete about it yet, but as we dealt with phase 2 in 2014, there's a lot that we do well, that we do as kind of practice, but it's not policy. We don't always, you know that we'll do it in the future that way, so that we are delivering a service in a way that accounts for people in all age groups. And so there may be some ways we want to improve that or make it sort of more formal, make it sort of more inclusive, etc. So one of the recommendations that came out of even just our staff discussion last couple weeks ago was that there are resources offered to people in age groups in the community by our partners, our community partners at Lake County or those places, other places than just within the city. And we thought staff needed to hear more about those. So that's the next step. So that's one kind of concrete step we thought we could do better. And there are, you know, resources available, and maybe we're not either telling the public about them, maybe we as staff members aren't as aware, those kinds of things. So that's really all I came to say, was that we're just diving into this information. There's a lot here in the checklist, and it targets kind of every aspect of what we do, housing, community development, public spaces, etc. And there's a lot of thinking that can go on. Part of the comp plan and the Parks Master Plan review process, we're going to be keeping this kind of hat on as we go through those processes to make sure we're keeping this in mind, etc. So I just want to let you know that we're doing that. There's activity in other communities. Raytown's extremely involved. Gladstone's going through an update of their comp plan as well as we are, and they're calling it Gladstone Community for All Ages Plan. So I mean, they've really grabbed on. Grandview's doing a lot. Raytown's working through it with their parks plan. So there's just a lot, and we're all just doing it a little bit differently. Everybody's kind of trying new things. So there's also this recognition program, and I just wanted to let you know about it. In case we want to pursue this, we are there's 3 levels, bronze, silver, and gold, and we're practically already at bronze for our commitment that we had last year with our task force and the work they did, and that we're continuing this conversation. All Mark's trying to do is acknowledge that communities are aware of the demographic changes, that they're making their citizens aware of those changes, and that they're trying to think about how they respond. So some of the communities who are participating have designated certain committees that they already had existing, like their Human Relations Committee or their Sustainability Committee or their Planning Commission, certain groups to target to kind of dive in and be that type of committee for their cities. We could do something similar here to sort of make sure you had committed citizens who are keeping an eye on this at all times, and also working through the checklist as they saw fit for the city. So I hope that's clear. There's a lot of background and a lot of different ways to succeed at this. We're just kind of trying to keep the conversation going, and keeping it aware, and it's an awareness game, and it's a policy game, and it's a
For this recognition program, does it cost anything, the application process?
No, it doesn't. We would have to decide we wanted to try to achieve a level by April, and then we apply formally, and then they'll let us know if we meet the mark. There is a maintenance component to it, so let's say we've achieved bronze, they want to see that we're committed and that we're continuing through the levels. But no cost, and then we'd be recognized at at their annual event. There'd be a little bit of publicity, but also just making sure we're
This is some kind of commitment of staff's time to do all this?
Yeah, a community commitment. I mean, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, there would be staff time to organize, but they really want community activity as well. So it's kinds of things where you'd be, this is, to reach a bronze level, hold at least one community meeting to discuss issues and present information. Invite a speaker to talk about these kind of topics.
Which we do a lot
Yeah.
already.
Right.
That's.
We certainly do. And then, so to silver, form a community for all ages committee, or assign tasks to the existing committee to have them work through this checklist in kind of a systematic way. The goal is to adopt a kind of comprehensive plan.
I think it's terrific. I mean, every single time we do a citywide survey, two things come back: encourage responsible redevelopment, fix our roads and infrastructure, and find a place for our seniors to live, right? Every single time. And I think it's terrific that this is top of mind, that it will be pervasive throughout the entire, not only staff, but then you're the ambassadors to the community. I think it's terrific.
Yeah, I would love to see us bring this back as an action item and really go ahead and apply for bronze, because we were pretty close to bronze already.
Yeah, I think you we're there.
Yeah, I do think we are, and I would love to see for staff to spend a little bit of time thinking about what it would take to get us to silver, because if it's just, having an existing committee take on some additional tasks, then trying to find out, is there a committee that can handle the additional
I
work?
think we would recommend to you that we make that part of the Sustainability Commission's
Oh, perfect.
responsibility.
Yeah, so I think that I
So
love
if you're
that.
open to that, I think that's easy and that gets
Are
us
you
to
guys
silver.
open
And
to that? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, we
I
can
mean, it
even
was
maybe
part
do
of their
silver
work
for.
plan
They
that they
chose-
presented back to you last fall. So I
And-
don't think it's
Wonderful.
a
And
difficult
3 of their members
transition.
served on our task force.
Yeah.
3 of their
Yeah,
former.
so I think it's great. I think let's take advantage of it. We are part of the pilot. Let's continue the momentum and move forward. It's low hanging fruit.
Yep.
And I think it's important, since we were a pilot member, to be on the ground route.
Well, and I think if you look to earn gold recognition, if you go to the second, adopt a communities for all ages plan, or include a community for all ages component in a major local plan such as a comprehensive plan,
Right.
strategic plan. We've got 2 of those in process.
Right.
It's easy to kind of show that continued progress
Yeah.
potentially, so.
We could get gold, forget the silver.
Well, not before April. We won't be that far along, but I think we could certainly, if you're comfortable saying and tasking the Sustainability Commission as kind of the keepers of community for all ages, then I think that certainly easily gets us to the silver level.
I think it's being supportive of their desires as a committee and letting them, give themselves stretch goals and doing what they're interested in. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, you know what they say at the Olympics?
No.
You don't win silver, you lose gold.
Oh, is that what
Nice.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much, Emily. All right.
Thank you, Emily.
So, any other questions, thoughts, issues?
I like that Emily's there, that you're looking like at the regional, big community, division of aging and those kinds of things, because it would be really nice for some of the people in this community to have a resource, just to be able to call City Hall and you can direct them. There's wonderful programs out there, but a lot of people just don't know about it.
Okay, so I don't think we need a street light, because we talked about street lights in our work session last week, so I think we're all good with that, right? Okay. I do have a question about the city administrator report. And the comprehensive plan and parks master plan are on here. Is it just because these are public forums? Because just the other committee meetings aren't on here?
Yes, so we put that public forum.
Just because they're public forums?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then city council Ward 1 progress, we're just kind of still on track.
Interviews scheduled for Monday the 9th. And I do need to know, I sent an email because we have one who's not able.
All right, when did you want to do that?
I think you told me you could be available on the 12th, if you're still available.
What time?
Can you do the 12th is a Thursday, could you do the 12th? Then you tell us, and we'll make it. He's available at any point on the 12th.
These on the night start at 4.
They start at 4.
Okay, why don't we just say 4 o'clock?
Okay, 4 o'clock on the 12th, I'll send confirmation on that. Did you look at those questions?
Yeah, so I got another meeting that night, I can go to it.
And then I'll circulate, we talked about feedback on some questions, and we'll get this circulated in the next day or two.
I got a question for Chief. Can you get a hold of,
You want me to put one of those breath things in your car, right?
No. Get a hold of Captain Kirk and see if it's all right if,
I'm gonna be gone
the
Thursday
mayor.
night.
Are you
Might
really?
go, yeah, we're going to the next one.
Tomorrow night.
And then we got, then we got Wake to go to.
All right.
Oh, fine, oh,
Is
guys,
it 6 o'clock? You can't make 6?
Where is
Six?
it?
Is it
No,
6
it's
o'clock?
off at
It's-
6, and I've got Wake to go to after that.
Yeah, it's at the police academy, but if he's in the next academy, he's gonna get it.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
I don't know, after we go through.
We go shooting in the academy, we go,
After they see
I
the
mean,
colors.
in the,
It's the FATS.
You get to go shoot the tasers and you get to go through the FATS machine.
yeah.
I've got your applications right here.
Tomorrow.
So,
I was thinking
Tomorrow
that
at
before I
6
left
o'clock.
today.
yeah, no, I told Rob I'd bring him and drop him off to you tonight. So,
where do you
yep.
meet?
Out there.
Out there at Johnson County?
Oh, yeah. So hey guys, I know a couple of people, sorry to interrupt, who've been in the audience before have expressed a desire or a concern of the inability to hear the council members when they speak and stuff like that. So I've asked kind of Laura, Arcie and I asked Laura and staff to look into that. Are you guys kind of okay with us looking into?
So let me get this straight. You want the residents to be able to hear us better
Yes.
when we talk?
Yes.
About how we spend their money. Well, that's agreement. I mean, no, that's fine. yeah.
We need like microphones hanging down.
That's
Oh, I
fine.
don't know what it is. It's just
We'll look at it.
Megaphone, check out everybody at
Through the
personal.
budget
megaphone
Maybe a
when
Glen
they
Cola
speak.
boom mic.
Today.
Shove it in everybody's face.
Yeah.
And just hover around.
And,
We're gonna get you a boom mic.
Oh, yeah. I can be like the guy from Mario Kart.
Yeah.
I think you need go cameras for everybody.
What do you call that guy, gaffer? What do you think?
Yeah, something like that.
It's the best boy, right? What is a best boy?
Maybe it's.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Hey, great job on the streets out there. During the public works.
Yeah,
Day.
thank you, John.
You're welcome.
John.
Not, definitely not me.
I know, right, Liz?
Yeah, I walk in with a sack
Do you
of
want me to print you out a hard copy?
No, that's not my fault.
It's dark chocolate. So good.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get you a prescription. Thank you. I didn't think she, Debbie's gonna be here, I thought I would be cancer. Gotta be there.
Like throwing toys from my
It's all the way over there.
No, but they told me to.
I'll tell you that Well, I told Kirk I was gonna talk to you tonight, and then if you're coming, I'll tell him the individual there. Yeah, it's,
That's why you're trying to get it.
Yeah, that's what you said, you have a lot of trouble to reschedule back.
no problem with that.
See you later. Yeah, I mean, there's too many on there.
On top of the thing.
Well, these get at those in a different way. Look at that, see if there's anything that you. So I already said something down. I was thinking that.
Damn it out, man.
So they just sit down there.
I know. Look you up.
The one I sent to you. Oh, here's one.
Oh, yeah. Like this, and then I grab a body pillow.
That was my throw. Here, came right back. Try it again. It was still a pretty bad throw.
Thank you.
I didn't even know that.
Go ahead and smack the switch above the blue button, the toggle switch.
But I.
There's a little
when I broke my
flippy
foot,
switch above
the way I
the
could
blue light.
sleep was hang it over the edge of my bed, so I was sleeping on my stomach.
Okay.
Yeah.